Welcome to the Half Yard Line. I am Tim.
And I am Luke.
And Luke, 2 games to go in the NFL football season. 2. There are only, well, I say 2 games. There's actually 32 games, 16 each. 2 weeks.
2 weeks of games.
2 weeks of games. Two games for each of your favorite teams out there. And I would like to start, if I could, this week with an announcement. And that announcement is the Steelers are back. We are officially... Mason Rudolph apparently had the sense knocked into him with Myles Garrett's helmet a couple years ago. I don't know. It is hilarious to me how at this time of the year even we've played 15 games. And in those 15, and I say we, I mean everybody in the league, 15 games. You know who you are. Mm-hmm. Right? And we're going to talk about some teams today that are very good at the whole football thing. And you play one game and it gets a little wild on you. And whether that's good or bad. And you are not so sure you know who you are anymore. And Steeler fans were ready to throw this team in the garbage can. George Pickens, immature, his football talents notwithstanding, get the bum out of
tendencies.
Here. Chase Claypool V2. Right, this is all Tomlin can do is bring in very talented but immature wide receivers, and then he can't control them anymore because he's not winning Super Bowls. Same thing. Bill Belichick sucks, right? As soon as he doesn't win any playoff games, everybody's like, see,
right?
See? And so
I told you,
throwing Tomlin out of town. All of a sudden, George Pickens goes all Madden on us for 4 catches for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and everybody's like, oh. I mean, obviously Pickens is good. If they just throw him the ball, maybe the quarterback's the problem. Mason Rudolph is the solution to our problems, and Mike Tomlin's a genius. Like, what? No, same crappy football team the Steelers had a week ago. I don't know. I mean, the Titans, unfortunately for you, seem to only figure it out in 2-minute stretches of clock time. So you have not had a similar experience.
No, not really. I mean, I have had a similar experience in terms of similar experiences to other weeks of the NFL season, i.e. most of them.
Yes.
Ryan Tannehill starting in place of the injured Will Levis, which kind of meant this was pretty much a game I watched out of obligation more than any sense of joy. But, we're winning the game. We're upsetting this playoff fringe Seahawks. We're big fans of Seahawks on the pod, big Geno fans. And then at the end of the game, we have the lead, decide to put up about as much resistance as a kind of a chocolate fire guard, as we would say in the UK. And then the Seahawks win in the most unsurprising turn of events ever. If you want to watch, I mean, if you're a masochist, if you want to watch the last couple of minutes of a game be mishandled by a team, you would find it hard to do better than watching the end of the Titans game where, Ryan Tannehill, veteran of like however many NFL seasons it is, takes 2 mind-numbingly stupid sacks on plays he couldn't afford to take sacks on to ensure we run out of time at the end, and the series before the defense allowing a team who's trying to come back at the end of the game to throw a series of deep comebacks to the sideline over and over again. It's like maybe teams do this most of the time. I don't know if anyone's watched NFL football in the coaching ranks, but it's like they tend to throw deep to the sideline and then just keep doing it. But apparently that wasn't on the old play sheet for the defense. So no, another miserable week as a Titans fan in a season which most of the NFL is terrible. Imagine how terrible we have to be terrible in a season of terribleness. And the answer is very terrible. Very terrible.
I actually got 2 things on that real quick, and then we'll hop into the actual show here. One is I would like to give you credit for accurately predicting the scoreline of this game.
I did predict the score.
But unfortunately, you had it backwards. You thought because the Titans were terrible, you would likely come out and win this one. And for a minute, looked like you might be right.
Yeah, games I expect us to get thrashed in, we tend to win. So that's been true for the entirety of Vrabel's tenure, like Dolphins game, case in point, right? But we have a very good record as an underdog, mainly because we're the underdog in most games. But no, this season we're the underdog because we're terrible. I think we had our one, which was the crazy Dolphins win, and the rest of it, a bad team is a bad team for a reason. So.
Yeah, and then the second thing is I thought it was wild in your game. And by the way, you could do better trying to find a game that was mismanaged at the end. Do you recall the Jets game that got their defensive coordinator fired because on Hail Mary he sent an all-out blitz? But anyhow.
It's Greg Williams.
Yeah,
that was Greg Williams, wasn't it? Yeah.
Setting that aside, I thought it was
kill
wild.
The head, Tim. What does he say? Kill the head and the body will fall. What did he say when he did the Bounty Gate thing? Something like that, right? Kill the head and the body will die or something.
Will rot, or it doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever.
But no, so the other thing I thought was wild is that game was somehow 10-6 going into the last 3 possessions, and it went touchdown thereafter. It was like you guys forgot to play defense, and by you guys, both teams forgot to play defense at the end of the game.
Collective amnesia.
Yeah, I don't know. It was wild. It was an interesting. We're not talking about that game, so we're gonna stop talking about it. But the draft chart, check it out. It was interesting.
It was.
But if you're done talking about that and ready to talk about something else, first of all, you got to find us on the social media at Half Yard Line Pod on Insta and Threads and X and whatever the kids are on these days. Check us out there. Shoot us an email. Would love to respond to your email. halfyardlinepod@gmail.com. We're on YouTube. That's the cool one. You get to see our pretty faces. Hello. But yeah, check us out on the things. Give us a like, a subscribe, a rate, a review, all those things that you can do to tell the algorithms that run the world these days that you think we're pretty cool people. And if you don't think we're pretty cool people, go do it anyway. Because if you do, then all of the other people will be forced to suffer through what you were forced to suffer through. And if anything I've learned in this world, it is that when we find something miserable, we want to share it with the universe. What is with the sirens in you this last couple of weeks, Luke? This is 2 in a row.
I don't know. I don't know if this will come through on the recording, but I don't know. Something the mean streets of Manhattan, Tim. It's the concrete jungle. Things happen, but hopefully nothing too as dramatic as that sounds. But yes, I am fine. So not going to be disrupting the podcast.
They're not.
I know what you're concerned about.
There will be nothing better than not for you, obviously. This would be terrible for you, but like the FBI, just breaking down the door mid podcast.
I get doxxed during the podcast by someone who doesn't like my opinions. That would be that's when you've really made it.
You're on. We would probably become more famous though. I think that would make the news.
Yeah, that's true.
Local podcaster doxxed after sharing his opinions on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of Brock Purdy, Luke, we have never had the response to an opinion, an episode, a short that we had to our take on Brock Purdy. We got the trolls out of their caves to come and hate on everything we had to say about Brock Purdy because we said anything other than Brock Purdy is the MVP of this NFL season, and he is carrying that team on his shoulders because if you have a different opinion, you're not allowed to be a football fan. And he played football last night. Did you catch Ravens Niners?
I did. I didn't catch it live. I was at a non-football watching friends for Christmas, so we were hanging out doing other stuff. Didn't want to enforce my will on the collective group, of whom I was the only person who had any interest in this magnificent sport of ours. But no, I did catch up on it, so I have seen the game.
Pod listeners all?
I was yeah. Oh, if they are, hi. But yeah, so I did catch up on it. As you mentioned, Brock Purdy, certainly not his best effort, you would say. 4 interceptions in the game. The Niners falling to the Ravens 33-19 in a what was kind of game of the season ish,
anyway.
Yeah, I mean the 2 best records in the NFL, the number 1 seed in each conference, playing each other late in the season in a standalone primetime game on Christmas night, the kind of stuff that NFL schedulers dream about. And that what they dream about happening is a tight, contested affair where it's coming out of the last 2 minutes and MVP frontrunner Brock Purdy has the ball or MVP challenger Lamar Jackson has the ball, and who knows what's going to happen. And what actually happened is the Ravens beat the Niners handily, as I say, 33-19. The 2, I guess, major stories around this were the 2 quarterbacks, as I already mentioned, Purdy and Lamar. Purdy, the MVP frontrunner going into the game, odds tumbling far down, or going up, I suppose is the right way to say it, in the wake of the 4 interception game that he had. Lamar skyrocketing up the charts to the presumptive favorite with 2 games left to play. I think if there's one thing we've learned about the MVP this season's in particular, everyone has their week. It seems like, it was Purdy's
week. It's almost like pre-Trump
then it was Dak's
NFL.
Week.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Everyone gets their week, right? Dak Prescott was the favorite. Then he crapped himself, and national television audience and everyone said he's terrible. Brock Purdy was there. Oh, it's 100%. It has to be. No one else could possibly. And then Brock Purdy craps the bed on national television, and now he plummets. Tyreek Hill was the front runner, then he got injured, missed a game. It's like, well, okay. So, no, it's been a very week-to-week race this year in a way that maybe it hasn't in previous years. So the two quarterbacks were certainly the headlines of this game. But really, I thought, to me, the Ravens' defense is the real story. Purdy throws 4 interceptions. And people are going to say, well, a couple of them were tipped. And yes, of course, that's true. And listen, not all of them on another day would be picked off. However, he also threw another couple passes that could have been picked.
Yes,
he hit a DB in the face mask with the ball, which is usually a good way to get yourself intercepted. There was a pass behind Debo, which was a draw, which could have easily been a pick six on another day. So it's one of those where you just say, listen, you didn't play well. A couple of the tips were his fault. One of them wasn't. These things happen. But yeah, the Ravens defense really taken the Niners offense to task in this game. I'm not sure, Tim, what you made of the defensive effort from Mike McDonald and his group on the defensive side of the ball for Baltimore, but I was very impressed with what they did and how they were able to slow what has been this kind of juggernaut offense throughout much of this NFL season. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
No, I thought it was interesting. They took an interesting approach. They jammed receivers. They put a lot of guys on. And listen, Baltimore's always been known as a team that kind of has exotic looking defenses, and they do things that are different. It's not surprising that you would have a young quarterback not respond to that well. I mean, one of the things go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say it goes all the way back to Rex Ryan, right? There was exotic zone blitzes, then Wink Martindale, Dean Pease, Mike McDonald, like these, all of the defensive coordinators that they've had over the past 20 years almost, it feels like, have had that same mentality. It's very front foot. We're going to attack you. We're going to smack you in the face. It's not sit back, play zone, hope for the best. It's an aggressive front foot style of defense, which has continued throughout multiple coordinators, which you just don't see that much. But I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, I'll let you.
No. But I mean, I think that's right. And so, like, I guess my point is, if Brock Purdy was not getting MVP hype, right? If the Niners were, 10-5 going into that game, or 10-6 going into that game, instead of 11-3, I don't know, I can't do math. Whatever it is, if they didn't have 10-4, if they were bad, or mediocre or above average instead of hands down the best team in the league, and he was getting press as, a very good quarterback or a promising young quarterback as opposed to MVP, I don't think anybody's surprised that a young quarterback playing Baltimore, when Baltimore is all, us against the world, underrated, can't believe we're the underdog against the best team in the league at their place. I mean, like, the whole thing was set up for a young quarterback to have a bad game. And Purdy had a bad game, no doubt about it. But let's not forget, the 49ers offensive line by the end of this game were like pulling dudes out of the front row and going, just give it a shot at left tackle. I mean, like, they were on their third left tackle. They were on their fourth left guard. They were nobody else on the sideline wearing a number that could play offensive line. I mean, there weren't any. And so, for a team that, quite candidly, has been built on giving Brock Purdy all the time in the world to find the open receiver and then let him make that throw, it didn't work out last night for the Niners. I would also note that, Brock Purdy, if he's done anything well all year, has been decision-making. And for whatever reason, that all went out the window. And I don't know if it's because after your second pick, you're nervous, or after your second or third or whatever number interception it is, you start seeing ghosts because you've been hit more this game than you have been, or guys been in your face. You're not able to get in a rhythm. I mean, this offense went 5 plays interception after 74 yards, right? So you're down there. That's the one he threw in the end zone, the first pick.
Yeah.
The next drive, they had 10 plays for 50 yards and kicked a field goal, and then went 4 plays pick, 3 plays pick. So you're not on the field. You're not getting into your rhythm. The defense is doing everything they want, and then they're hyped, man. I don't know if you, like, it almost looked like a college defense out there. And what I mean by that is every time they made a tackle, they were getting up like they had just, like, climbed Mount Everest. The thing had happened. And one of the things that I will note about this game is that the Niners started interception, field goal, interception, interception. And at that point, the score was 10-5. The Baltimore Ravens take over. They go exactly -3 yards in 4 plays and have to settle for a field goal. All right. So at that point, you're thinking, listen, we've sort of made it, right?
Yeah, weathered the storm.
We weathered the storm. We got the hold. They come back out. They had their best drive of the game, go 6 plays and 67 yards for a touchdown. And you're thinking, all right. Everything's good. Now, how you start a game, 3 out of 4 of your first possessions are turnovers. Somehow you manage to live through that, and you're 1 point down, with 2 minutes left in the half. And then you let Baltimore drive immediately down the field and kick a field goal. And that was all she wrote. I mean, then Baltimore comes out the second half. If you're the Niners, you go, hey, listen, that was the worst half football we could ever have played. Yeah. And we're down by 4
couldn't be worse. Basically couldn't be worse. And it's 16-12.
Yeah. And so you come out, you play better the second half. You rewrite that. No, they came out and they played worse in the second half. Baltimore played better somehow. And you go punt, Baltimore scores a touchdown, interception, Baltimore scores a touchdown, punt, Baltimore kicks a field goal, and the game was over at that point. Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, if you watch the game, it got a little bit cute at the end. The Niners went for it on 4th down and didn't get it, so they turned it over, but then they forced a punt, then they scored a touchdown, then they forced a punt. They were down there about to score again with 3 minutes left. You thought, oh, maybe, and then they botched the whole thing in the red zone. I mean, when you have Sam Darnold throwing the ball for you, what do you expect to have happen? So, the game was over 3 possessions into the second half, and you're sitting there going, this is the same San Francisco 49ers team that when they've had their full complement of talent has been absolutely unstoppable. So I said a lot there. I'll chalk it up to Brock Purdy probably has some lessons to learn, number one, and that's okay because he's a young quarterback. Number two, the offensive line was decimated by injuries, and at some point that's going to take a toll. And then number three, I guess the Baltimore Ravens, much to my chagrin, should get at least some positive press for the way that defense came out and played.
Yeah, no, I think all definitely things I would agree with. I mean, on the San Francisco offensive point, then maybe we can pivot to the Ravens offensive side of this. I think what's interesting in the wake of this game is very apparent that when the Shanahan offense, and I'll call it the Shanahan offense on purpose, right? Not the San Francisco or the Shanahan offense, because that's what they're running. Get some sand in the cogs. It's really not the same. They want to do everything. Shannon Sharp said something really, put it in a good sort of wrapped up little phrase earlier today. He said they throw the football on their terms, which I thought that's exactly right. Every time you watch the Niners this season, it felt like Kyle Shanahan is calling exactly the plays he wants, exactly when he wants, and they're working. We'll run it here. We'll pass it now. We'll run it here. Like Brock Purdy, if you look at his pass attempts, I think I don't know what it is now, but before this game, he was 21st in the league in pass attempts. So they're not throwing it 40 times a game and saying, hey, Brock, can you go do something? Because we're kind of in the mud. Basically, they are running their offense as perfectly designed by Kyle Shanahan, and it is working. And like you say, Purdy's been decisive. He's been accurate. He's been poised. He's done exactly what they want him to do. This game shows the limits of both the Shanahan offense and having that style of quarterback. There is a reason that there aren't a ton of starting quarterbacks in the NFL that look like Brock Purdy, who play like Brock Purdy. There just aren't. Is there even another one? I don't know. Because when the game gets out of your control, what a guy like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Hurts, even, I appreciate this sounds silly, but like even Will Levis, right? Because of the physical tools that these guys have, they can break a couple tackles and run for a first down. They can make a guy miss. They can make a crazy throw down the sideline. They can jam it into a tiny window because they've got a strong arm. Like there is a reason that NFL teams want these types of guys under center. It's not just because they look great in the pads. It's because they can also do stuff to get you out of a hole. They can pull a rabbit from a hat when you need it. And Brock Purdy isn't that type of player, which is fine, right? That's just not his strength. It's processing, it's accuracy.
Wasn't Tom Brady's strength either. Yep.
It wasn't Tom Brady's strength either, exactly. So there's something to the style of offense and that style of quarterback going together, which is why when they drafted Trey Lance, that was going to be such an interesting experiment to see you take a guy with raw physical ability and stick it into an offense like that. What does that do? I mean, you got a guy who can run for 50-yard touchdowns in that offense. Like, what are you going to do from a defensive standpoint? Obviously, that didn't pan out for several reasons. We're never going to see that happen. But to the point around the kind of offense in general, it's designed in such a way to be front run, right? we'll get the lead, we'll keep the lead, you can't catch us. And very few defenses can slow that team down because the sheer talent level is just absurd with Debo and Kittle and Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams. And, it's ridiculous, right? So the thing is, once you can get some sand in those gears, like I say, it's not the same offense. They want to run play action. They don't want to run straight drop back game. It's not the strength of it. And once they're off their, I guess, rhythm, everything starts to get a little bit out of control and they can't get it back. If you look at the games that they've lost, you mentioned it, when they've had injuries, basically, they lost the 3 games earlier this season. They lost yesterday. They couldn't get it back going again. So I looked through their season. So on the quarterback front, right, Brock Purdy has no game-winning drives this season and no fourth quarter comebacks at all. Not a single one, which is part of the reason I think people dinged his MVP case, because like when the chips are down, what have you done? People like seeing that kind of stuff, right? You led the game-winning drive for whatever.
Right, you got to put the chips down to get there, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's well said. San Francisco's only played 3 one-score games all season, so they've blown out pretty much everyone in all the wins that they've had. The only win they've had that was a one-score game was against the Rams, which was, I think, week 3 or week 4 early in the year, and they've lost the other 2 one-score games. So they're 1-2 in one-score games. They just don't have that many of them. Like this offense gets ahead, stays ahead, and beats the living snot out of you. And then when it comes time to like, crap, we have to recover, they don't seem to be able to do it. The stat that came up on the broadcast
blew my mind.
Shanahan 0-37 when down by 8 or more points in the fourth quarter. So he's never won one. Now, to be fair, and a friend of mine pointed this out, not many teams do actually win from that position, fewer than we would assume.
Yeah, but over that same period of time, 0 other teams have never done it.
Exactly. So there's that. And also you think Kyle Shanahan is an offensive guru, master planner, master chef, whatever you want to call it, right? So he can't work it out. So it's really interesting you look at what the Browns did to this team and you look at what the Ravens did, the 2 best defenses this team has played. They found ways to make it muddy, make it disruptive, make it not a clean picture for Purdy or the offensive coordinator / head coach in this case. You can create problems for this team. So make people uncomfortable, make the quarterback uncomfortable. You make him create, and it's not what he's good at. So you put him in a position where he's going to fail. And that's basically what happened in this game. And just one last thing, what I thought was funny is when Sam Darnold came on. I don't know if you noted this. Obviously, Purdy gets injured and comes out. You notice how much harder Sam Darnold throws the ball. It's actually really noticeable on the broadcast. And I appreciate Sam Darnold has not had a great NFL career and probably never will. But you watch the ball get to the player and you're like, wow, that's really hard. He's throwing the ball really hard. Like Daniel Jeremiah tweeted that out. He was like, listen, don't take this any other way. But the arm strength is just completely different when you talk about Sam Darnold versus Brock Purdy. I was like, yeah, no, it is. I mean, that's totally fine to say. Doesn't mean Sam Darnold's better than him, but it is noticeable when you watch the broadcast. I was like, I reckon the receivers are like, oh, that's already here. Like, what happened?
Well, and you hear the commentator often will say things like, he only had the strongest arm. He doesn't have the strongest arm. And you're like, oh, well, I don't know if Sam Darnold's got the strongest arm in the history of the NFL, but he certainly has a lot stronger arm than we've been seeing here all day. No, everything you said there, I agree with. I think, at the end of the day, I was shocked that the Shanahan offense is incapable of a comeback. I mean, 8 points in the fourth quarter is not all of that unheard of. I mean, I think leading by 8 points in the fourth quarter, you've got something like a 65% win probability, not a 99% win probability. And so now it's 8 or more. So obviously if you're down 12, 15, 20, the odds crank up. But to go over and not 0 for 5, over 37 with an opportunity, to have a comeback in the fourth quarter of more than 8 points and do it 0. I mean, like I said to you yesterday, I said it, that didn't surprise me at all. The Shanahan offense is built for coming behind. I said, fine. 1-36, 4-33. None of those would surprise me. But 0 for 37 to me is shocking and says something about the way Shanahan thinks about the game. I'm not confident when Shanahan's down 3 scores in the fourth quarter, he's trying to win the football game as much as he was earlier in the day. And you look at the decision to leave Brock Purdy on the sideline, down 2 scores, ball in the opposing team's territory, and he's medically cleared to come out there and play. And I wanted to get your take on that, Luke. To me, that was waving a white flag. And yeah, Sam Darnold played okay. Came back, got him a touchdown, came back, got him in position to score another touchdown. But when we force the defense into a 3-and-out, and I say we, am the 49ers, I don't associate with the team. When they force them into a 3-and-out, and all of a sudden you got the ball back, and Sam Darnold, whatever, that game was in doubt at that point. If they had scored down there in the red zone instead of taking an inexplicable sack with 2 minutes and 50 seconds to go and 3 timeouts, you got a real opportunity there to win the game. Now, it's likely? No, of course not likely, but certainly doable. And I don't feel like Shanahan said, come hell or high water, win it in this game. I think he said, this one's probably got away from us. I'm not risking a player who's played poorly tonight. I think about Russell Wilson, and then I'll let you have your say. Russell Wilson goes out and throws 4 interceptions, and then he gets the opportunity to have the fourth quarter comeback.
Right.
And I don't care if he's got half a leg chopped off. They're going to roll him out there, and he's going to throw the ball around like a crazy moron, and they're either going to get intercepted or he's going to bring the team back to win. And I was really surprised that Shanahan didn't give Purdy that opportunity in the fourth quarter after what? I mean, he looked like he wanted to go back in. And I don't know if you've seen the clip, but they've got Purdy not Purdy. They got Purdy standing there talking to Shanahan. Shanahan's got the play sheet in front of him. And he clearly says, hey, we're going to stick with Sam for the rest of the game. And, Purdy's almost in tears walking back to the bench. So I don't know. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on sticking with Sam Darnold there at the end when clearly they told Purdy, the doctors said Purdy could play?
Yeah. It's always a hard one because, you don't know what was said or how severe the injury is, all that kind of jazz. I mean, on paper, yeah, I would agree with you. I do also think let's be frank and let's forget to what you said earlier about all of the hoopla around the Purdy MVP. Like, forget all of that. If it was just a game, if this was week 6, right, and Brock Purdy throws 4 interceptions and the game is, probably done, but, whatever, it would not be surprising to see a young quarterback just taking out the firing line at that point and just say, listen, don't worry, like, you're going to start next week. Don't worry. You had a bad game. Confidence is knocked a little bit. It's fine. Right. So it wouldn't be surprising if that was the case. In a, context free situation, you would think, okay, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, I would guess that it's just a case of like, it's probably gotten away. And listen, if Sam Darnold can get us a touchdown here, maybe they put him back in when we think we can get one more drive out of it or something. I don't know. It is definitely curious and not something I would imagine happening to a superstar quarterback on another team, or, which is what the comparisons for Purdy have been, right? Like, he's the franchise quarterback. He's the star. It was surprising. Adds fuel to the fire to those people who would say anyone could play quarterback in this offense, blah, 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 blah. But we've had that conversation anyway in previous podcasts. Go back and check that out if you missed it a few weeks back. So yeah, I just think Shanahan's probably thinking, yeah, we're probably not going to win. So I'll let Sam Darnold do what he does, and if he can get us close enough, maybe I'll put Purdy back in, but I'm probably not going to. The last thing on this game from the Niners' point of view, I'd just say is, you mentioned the offensive line injuries. A lot of those did also come after the game was kind of over. Like, Trent Williams was still in the game when Purdy throws interception number 4. So, the game is done. I appreciate it doesn't help your comeback bid when you can't block, and the Niners offensive line couldn't block the Ravens defense.
The game was kind of over. Though.
It's doable, but I don't think it had a huge impact on the outcome of the game.
In the second half. I don't know. Early enough in the second half.
Sure.
That the score.
But they were all in there before, and they were down.
I don't know.
I mean, they were already in there, and they were getting their ass beat. So anyway, point being, that's enough about the Niners. Quick kind of few minutes on the Ravens, because we've spoken a lot about the interesting. I think because the Niners is probably almost a more interesting case for this, because it's the good team that fell apart. The Lamar Jackson MVP case takes a big step forward in this game. Lamar played outstandingly well. I mean, as well as I've seen him play probably in any game. And it's not the crazy stats of his MVP year where he ran for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he threw for 165 yards and 4 touchdowns.
His first MVP year.
Well, there's 2 weeks. There's 2 weeks left, Tim. I'm thinking it's going to end up being, CJ Stroud or someone. Could be Joe Flacco. But the thing I liked about Lamar in this game is he had 7 carries for 45 yards. He was the team's leading rusher on the night. There wasn't a big achievement because they didn't run it very well. You look at who he's throwing it to, like Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers is a rookie. Rashad Bateman, okay, he was a first-round pick, but not really done much. Odell Beckham is not Odell Beckham of yesteryear. His number one target's Mark Andrews. He's out for the year. His number one running back was meant to be J.K. Dobbins. He's out for the year. His new superstar, exciting running back Keaton Mitchell comes in. He's out for the year. So this offense has taken some serious knocks, and Lamar has managed to overcome it. And what's interesting, I think, and what I want to get your take on here is, as we kind of wrap the conversation around this game, is he's now their MVP frontrunner, right? And if you look statistically, just if you were a box score scout and said, hey, Lamar Jackson's thrown for X yards and Y touchdowns and run for X yards, it's actually not a very compelling case if you just look at it on pure numerical value, right? You look at Brock Purdy's numbers, that's been the big thing. He's leading the league in passing rating. He's leading the league in touchdowns. He's leading the league in, yards per attempt and all this stuff, which is all fine. But I think it's very much a lies, damn lies, and statistics argument when you look at Lamar's box score or game logs for the season versus his MVP candidacy. And this game is exactly why. The number of plays where you can tell that on the defense for the 49ers is tearing their hair out because he's somehow keeping the play alive. He's just doing enough to create a window for himself. He's escaping a sack. He's not running for the crazy long touchdowns, the backbreaker plays, but it was like the little plays here and there and here and there and here and there that he kept making. And the fact you have to account for him as a runner because he's so electric obviously plays a huge part. The word that a lot of people have used is gravity, right? Which is more of an NBA term, as I've heard it. Like, Steph Curry's got gravity. So everyone goes to Steph Curry, he passes it, and that's why Klay Thompson makes all these 3-pointers, right? It's the same with Lamar Jackson. What I think is interesting for him as an MVP candidate is would be maybe the only time I can remember where people are actually talking about this kind of thing. This most valuable player concept is quite nebulous because of the terminology, right? Like Lamar Jackson is more valuable to his team than arguably any quarterback in the entire league, apart from maybe like Patrick Mahomes. Like in terms of who else can run what the Ravens run, like anyone. But seriously, like if you put any other quarterback in that offense, Jalen Hurts possibly would be the other one I could think of who's got that real like dual threatness.
He's certainly
to him,
more valuable to the Ravens than Brock Purdy is to the 49ers.
Right. Yeah. Just on spec, right? You would say the Ravens without Lamar are going to be so much worse. It's going to be notable, similar to Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes and all that stuff. So I just think it's an interesting debate, and the MVP case this year will be interesting on that basis of who ends up winning it. But his, stats in this game are very impressive, not eye-popping, but I thought he had a tremendous game. And for the hoopla around him in the offseason about will he leave, wants a trade, doesn't get traded, gets the contract, does anyone want to, blow him out the water with an offer? He goes back, new offense under Todd Monken, and the fact that he's not relying on just the pure athleticism as much as he used to, showing such growth as a passer, I think has been really impressive, and I think probably has been underreported throughout this season until he does it on this stage when everyone sees it. So that's a lot of word salad. I thought Lamar was excellent. I think it's a really interesting MVP case. I don't know your thoughts on kind of Lamar Ravens offense in this game, which obviously led them to the big win. But I was extremely impressed with how Lamar Jackson played in this game.
Well, for a couple of reasons. One, because you just told me how wonderful they were, and two, because I hate everything about their team. I'm going to take the contrarian point of view and go, it's the same offense that started the game, 3 plays, 2 yards, punt, 4 plays, minus 6 yards, safety. And then required, 4 turnovers from the San Francisco offense before they really got it going. And then finally, when San Francisco's defense got tired of being on the field the whole game and having their offense continue to give the ball back to Baltimore, they let Baltimore go touchdown, field goal.
7 straight possessions with a score, right? They had after going punt, safety to start the game.
Yeah. So, but yes, but a lot of those were field goals. They were, I don't know. I guess my point is clearly Lamar is driving people bananas. You saw it last week in Jacksonville. One of my favorite, moments of the season, and the play has been shown on TV 1,000 times. I'm sure you'll know who the player is, but I don't. But a defensive lineman, has Lamar wrapped around, and he pulls out and he throws the ball and he ends up completing it for, 60 yards or a touchdown or some nonsense. And the defensive lineman just looks at him and goes, and shakes his head. It's like, what more can I do than what I've already done? And so I don't want to take too much away from Lamar. He's clearly playing very well. I will be on record as we transition out of this to say, watch out. This is a quintessential trap game coming up for Baltimore.
Yep.
They've just vindicated themselves, right? Oh, underdogs, I'll show you underdogs. They come out there and they make San Francisco look silly. Just watch out. Miami may hang a big one. That's all I'm going to say about it. We'll see. Baltimore facing Miami next week in their most recent of very difficult games against very high quality talent. We'll see. But it's very hard to put the emotion into this game that Baltimore did, have it outcome like they did, and get back up and try to do it again next week.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And listen, like you said, every week the MVP frontrunner has then been terrible. So look forward
Lamar.
To Lamar Jackson throwing
Madden
four.
curse.
Yeah, right. Throws three pick sixes in the first half, and I guess someone else is the MVP now. Let's just give it to, I don't know, Lifetime Achievement Award for Joe Flacco.
All right, Luke, I'm gonna take us to a new spot here, and we're gonna do this a little like we don't normally. So I'm just gonna give you a little. I want a little hot takiness, if I could. We're gonna look at the wild card races because the division races this year not particularly exciting, with the exception of the bad divisions. Right? I mean, the NFC East has a little bit of noise with Dallas and Philly, but not a lot.
Right.
Really, it's which crappy team is going to make it in from the South, the AFC South, which crappy team
the NFC South
is going to make it in from the NFC South. And then, there's a little bit of, Kansas City can Kansas City really lose enough games to put anybody other than Kansas City out of that? I mean, it'd have to be Las Vegas, which would just be mind-blowing. So let's set the division races aside. Let's assume your division winners are Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville out of the AFC, and San Francisco, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Tampa out of the NFC. So we're looking at wild cards. In both conferences, you kind of have one team solidified. In the AFC, it's the Browns. In the NFC, it's the Cowboys. And then there's
maybe the Eagles if they flip, right?
Yeah,
one of those two teams will take a wild card spot.
We gave the Eagles the division, so we'll give the Cowboys the wild card. You've got a whole lot of bleh. I mean, just absolute bleh. And so acknowledging for a moment that none of these teams are any good, I need you to put two more of them in the playoffs. And so let's talk AFC first. My beloved Pittsburgh Steelers should be leading the way at 8-7, though listen, you want to talk about screwing up your tie-breaking opportunities for a team earlier in the year had pretty good tie-breaking outcomes. They were winning a lot of AFC games, losing a lot of NFC games. Those don't hurt you as much. Winning a lot of division games, those help you a ton. This team's 4-1 against the AFC North, which is a pretty good division, and they are not that against the rest of the league. Managed to lose to all three AFC South teams that are ahead of them. And so
they beat the other AFC South team, though, so thanks for that.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And then, you've got the Steelers at 8-7, Colts at 8-7, Texans at 8-7, Bengals at 8-7, Raiders and Broncos holding on for dear life at 7-8, and then you've got the Buffalo Bills at 9-6. I presume you're putting the Bills in?
Yeah, I would put the Bills in. Can I just not pick one? I mean, I would say, let me put it this way. If I was another AFC playoff team, right, and we assume that 6 are, let's call them blocks, right? I mean, maybe they're not, but let's assume those 6 are in.
Yeah.
Of the remaining contenders, if I was another AFC team, who do I want to come up against? The least would be probably the Texans with CJ Stroud. Yeah, I'm guessing, right? It would probably be the Texans with CJ Stroud. Because at least that's the only team of the other contenders who is starting their actual quarterback. The Broncos aren't going to get in. I don't think the Broncos are going to get in. So the Raiders have a maybe outside, snowball's chance in hell, so to speak. But not that snowball has a chance, but you get what I'm saying. So I'd probably say the team I'd want to see the least would be the Texans, but that obviously depends on CJ Stroud playing. Case Keenum got them the win against my Titans last week and then kind of did the thing which all old backups do, which is generally not play that well, apart from again Joe Flacco.
It's because he rested on his laurels and went on the Manning cast. That was the problem.
Yeah,
I don't know if you watched the Manning cast last week. Kevin Hart was supposed to be on. He canceled. So they brought Case Keenum in based on his performance, and he was talking himself up and did not play as well. Did not play as well.
So I'd probably say Houston is the team you'd want to play the least. The kind of team that could score the most points generally is the one I want to play the least. I will if Stroud comes back, which I think he should be this week, and plays the final 2 games, I'll give it to Houston. None of these other teams. I'd say probably the Steelers are the next team I wouldn't want to play because
now we're down to the 9th team.
Yeah, because the Steelers are, the offense is, all over the place, but the defense can cause you problems on any given day, can score touchdowns, can create turnovers, which in a playoff game is going to be a hugely significant thing, even more so than in the regular season, because obviously playoff games tend to be, very close. So I'll give it to Houston. I would be honest in saying I think the top 6 of this. Actually, I'm not even going to say the top 6 because I don't think Jacksonville's any good either. But the Browns, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, and the Ravens would be the 5 best teams in this conference. And if we were doing, sight unseen and there was no division winners, that's how it would stack up. I would probably say Houston. But I don't feel necessarily great about any of these teams. The only reason I would give Houston the edge is because you are starting the guy throwing the ball that you want to start when no one else is. Unless you count Denver, who I don't think are going to get.
I don't think they would prefer to start Russell Wilson if they had a choice.
But they've also got too much ground to make up as well, in my opinion. It's so late. You only got 2 games left. I just don't think it's going to happen. And you just lost to the Patriots at home, who are crap. So,
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh hopefully is going to get Kenny Pickett back, and then they'll have the guy throwing. But listen, Pittsburgh's in trouble. For those Pittsburgh fans out there, and there are a couple who listen to this podcast, if you didn't know, Pittsburgh needs Houston to lose or Indianapolis to lose this week, and then the other to win in Week 18 against the one who loses this week, so that you can have. They both. We need them. One of them to lose 2 games, and one of them to only win 1 game. To have you get
into
both.
You get into this it's not mathematically impossible, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. So actually, the Bengals, even though they're currently seated below the Steelers, have a higher probability of getting in because of the way things stack up.
Really, even though the Bengals haven't won a single divisional game.
That is correct. 0-5.
That's surprising.
Yeah,
that must be a first if they made the playoffs without winning a division game. I'm sure that's never happened. That can't have happened.
That won't happen because they'll have one more division game and they would have to win it to have any chance of making. But yeah, certainly being 0-5 with a chance is not normal. They're as good against the rest of the league as the Steelers are bad against the rest of the league. In the NFC, Luke, I actually think there's a bit more Palace intrigue here. I mean, I think there are a lot of fun stories here. There are a lot of really bad teams here who have if the AFC teams are underaccomplished, a lot of it is because of injury. A lot of it, you're talking about, they're all missing their quarterback. You can kind of write sick notes, right? I'm sorry, Joey missed school, but here's why. For those teams, you don't have the same excuse set for the kind of the mediocrity in the NFC. And so, again, we're going to give the division titles to San Francisco, Philly, Detroit, and Tampa. We're giving Dallas a wild card. You've got 2 8-7 teams right now, the Rams and the Seahawks, pod favorite Seahawks.
Yeah.
The Rams have had quite a run, really kind of caught on the second half of this year after being bleh at the beginning. Puka Nacua being the obviously rookie breakout. Everybody's loving Puka Nacua. They've gotten play from lots of different DeMarcus Robinson. I mean, lots of different guys have kind of come out of the woodwork for the Rams. And so a lot of fun there. You've got Geno's everybody's favorite, kind of comeback player of the year last year, hanging on to it a little bit. They're struggling this year more than they did last year in games they should win, if that makes some sense. But 1-4 in the division has really hurt them quite a bit. They're going to have to do better than that the last 2 weeks. You've got 4 teams at 7-8 who, of course, all need help from those 8-7 teams for a chance. Minnesota, the Kirk Cousins injury maybe gives them some benefit. They played with Josh Dobbs for a couple of weeks. They're playing with, oh my gosh,
Nick Mullins.
There you go, Mullins now, and so some challenge there. I'm a big Minnesota was the 13-0 or whatever last year after. Nearly losing every game they played, but they lose none of them.
11-0 one-score games.
Yeah, came back really and have done the opposite this year. They've lost every game. They had a prayer of losing. which you'd expect. I mean, that's called reversion to the mean for a reason. But them sitting at 7-8, and then the Atlanta Falcons are at 7-8 only because they get to play their own division. Tampa at 8-7. I mean, theoretically, the Falcons could hop in. I think they're much more likely to win their division than they are to steal a wild card spot. The other two teams at 7-8 are the Jordan Love-led Green Bay Packers and the New Orleans Saints. Somehow still in. You've got the Saints, the Falcons, the Bucks, who are all awful. One of them go to the playoffs, and theoretically two could. Any thoughts on the NFC?
Just one other note, Tim, which my favorite thing that come out of this, not my favorite thing to come out this weekend, but something that's very funny. Do you know who's still alive, mathematically speaking, for the playoffs? Chicago.
6-9.
How are they even... I mean, there's two teams in their own division who are already... they're last in their division, I should say.
Yep, they are last, yeah.
And they've won 6 games, they lost 9. They're still alive to make the postseason somehow. I mean, it's not going to happen. So, yes, they're not going to make it. But that is just funny.
0-4.
Yeah, just a reminder that the NFC is not very good if you needed one. Chicago could still theoretically make the playoffs with 2 games left, which is insane. Of the teams that you've listed out, I won't go through them all. The Rams are the best team of that group. And I think there's also some we've been there, done it-ness to them. I would expect them to hang on to a wild card spot. Don't know if it's 6 or 7, but I would expect them to fill one of those two to go along with, Dallas, if we're giving it to them, or Philly, depending on the division there. The other one, I would say of the teams, Seattle is the one I would feel the most confident in because there's a little bit more solidity there, continuity. Like they haven't turned over that much of the roster in the offseason. Same coach, same quarterback, a lot of the same players. But you're right, they've been up and down. Took a Drew Lock game-winning drive and then a Geno Smith game-winning drive to win the last 2 games, so hardly something that fills you with confidence. The only other team in that group that I think would be in with a good shout is probably the Packers. But the Packers just had to come back and kick a last-second field goal to beat the Carolina Panthers, who are the worst team in the NFL. So again, it's just this season where you said it on last week's pod, it's mediocre beating mediocre every single week. Like I thought the Packers would win the rest of their games, but going into the last few because they were not very difficult opponents. I mean, they had the Giants, then they had the Buccaneers, then they have the Panthers. Now they've got the Vikings and the Bears to finish out the season. They've managed to lose to the Giants, who were starting a guy who's famous for eating chicken cutlets at quarterback.
Tommy
and
DeVito.
Baker Mayfield's Buccaneers beat them pretty comfortably, and then they take a last-second field goal to beat the worst team in the NFL. I mean, that really is not very good. So I would have said the Packers of the chasing pack, if you will. No pun intended. But let's be honest, it's not an overwhelming group. So, I mean, I would say, this is an easy thing to say because it's where the standings are right now. I would probably say it stays as it is for... They might flip, Rams and Seahawks, but I would also say that there's no one chasing who I think is good enough to make up ground. And if you can just hobble over the line, which I think the team should do, then I think it'd be okay. I mean, the advantage the Rams they've got the Giants this week, who are probably going to start Tyrod Taylor because Tommy DeVito's been benched. Whether that's good or bad for their prospects, that's your call. Then they're playing the 49ers in the last game of the season. Now, the Niners, because they got beat, will have something to play for in that game. It was looking like they might not because they may have wrapped up the 1 seed. So that's going to be a tough one. But I think they can afford to absorb a loss and still make it because I don't see other teams getting to 9 wins who have only got 7 now because you'd have to win both the games that are left. The Seahawks have got your Steelers this week at home, and then they've got the Cardinals to finish the season. So no offense, but I would expect them to win both those games. As you mentioned, they found it quite hard to win games they should win of late. Right. So I just don't think I can see any of the other teams winning both their games, regardless of who they're against, because they're not very good. Like, if the Falcons make the playoffs, it would be a catastrophe for them. The league would be furious. I mean, it's just difficult to win 2 games in a row anyway, let alone if you suck. And I think almost all those teams suck to various degrees. And it might be that the NFC South sends a sucky team to the playoffs, like you say, but I don't think they'll send 2.
Well, and I think that's the challenge for me. And a wise man I once knew told me that it's the schedule stupid with some of these things. But if you look at the schedule for these guys, it's hard because they're first of all, they're playing each other. And second of all, they're all bad. So, I mean, like the Bears, who are 6-9, mathematically still alive, get to finish Falcons Packers. All right. So they're playing 2 of these teams. So they hold it in their own palm of their hand.
They could get to 8 wins.
They could absolutely get to 8 wins, and 8 wins might be enough which is scary. But so they could win. You've got the Saints are playing the Bucks and the Falcons. Okay, hey, we've heard those names before. Those are both winnable games. They could, certainly win their last two. They could also lose their last two because they're also terrible. The Packers are playing the Vikings and the Bears. They're both in this discussion. So they're all playing each other. There's going to be some combination of Jill beats Sally, who beats Bill, but Bill beat Jill. And it's all going to be, it'll be a mess. If you're an NFL schedule maker, you're at least going, well, at least there's a lot of combinations. A lot of times this time of year, right, you're going, well, if this team wins, they're in. And if they don't win, then this other team wins and then they're in. And that's really that's
the most teams that
scenarios.
Are alive this late in the season, I think, for something like 20 years. So mathematically still alive with 2 games left.
You and I have bitched and moaned all year about the mediocrity and how the team, nobody's good. And maybe the NFL schedulers and the NFL sort of overlords, the Roger Goodell types, would say, this is exactly what we wanted.
No, yeah, I think it is. I think it is. Because looking ahead, the playoffs are not yet here, but on paper, what you would have said, we said it going into the games last week. We said, it looks like, the Niners, if they run roughshod over the entire league, then it'll be boring NFC playoffs. The Niners take a beating, right? And take a confidence-knocking beating at the hands of the Ravens. The quarterback plays very badly for the first time in his entire career. So we have no idea what's going to happen there. It creates a very interesting dynamic in the postseason because this is the first year in quite a long time where I don't really know who the favorite is to win the Super Bowl. Usually it's pretty obvious who at least the favorite or the 2 favorites are. It's probably the Ravens right now, but last week it wasn't. 2 weeks ago it was the 49ers. And 4 weeks ago it was, the Eagles. So it's bounced around all over the place. No one's worked it out. I think this is definitely a year that I have circled as a low seed makes a run year, which is great for the league, right? They love those. The Packers did it. The Giants did it twice.
Steelers.
Steelers did it. Anyone can do it. Yeah. Anyone can do it. That's good for the league. So I would say this is a year where we could get a kind of surprise bolt from the blue winner. Maybe it's the Bills. If the Bills have cobbled it together,
finally
which they seem
get
to
one
have,
after being bad.
They finally get one, right? This is a year. As we said last week, Joe Flacco's Browns is what we're hoping for because it would be the funniest thing to ever happen.
Oh my God! Please.
I think it's a wide open race. I think the Niners would still be my provisional favorites in the NFC just because apart from a couple of teams, I don't see who in the NFC is going to do what the Ravens and Browns did on paper in terms of get that offense to stutter and then you can win the game. But someone might, or someone watches the Ravens tape and goes, we could run that. I think of when the Chargers beat Lamar Jackson in his first ever playoff game and they put 8 defensive backs on the field every single snap. Yep. And everyone went, that's a good approach.
That's
and then
lots
of other teams copied it. And then Lamar had to work that out and the Ravens had to move on. So these things do happen. But I think it's good from that perspective in that it's wide open. The downside to it is it's not a bunch of powerhouse teams who are going to be going rock'em sock'em 4 quarters. It's going to be a lot of, who didn't turn it over 3 times? Or who dropped the fewest passes? Or who committed the fewest pre-snap penalties? It's that kind of who can be the least bad might win you the first round of the playoffs. And then you're in the tournament and who knows. But I do think the schedule makers will be happy about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so I hope, fellow NFL fans, that this is the NFL you had always dreamed of because it's certainly the one the owners dream of. And it's the one we're going to be stuck with, I think, for a while. The rules are all established to force parity, to make it to where teams can all win. Getting good and staying good for a long time is the exception, not the rule. The Patriots 20 years in a row or whatever it was, nonsense.
Yeah.
Is not going to happen again, very likely. And so if you like your team to be good all the time, sorry. If you like if you're a fan of a bad team and you want to kind of jump out there every now and again, this is probably your NFL. And to that point, Luke, I think it's probably time to officially allow one team to graduate from the doldrums, from the bottom of the pack, from the Downtrodden Franchise Index. We have had several teams this year in the DFI look good. The Browns are not getting out. Sorry, Browns, you're stuck. It's one good year does not fix what has happened to the Browns. But there was a team who took some strides last year. They looked pretty good last year. They started to kind of make you think maybe it was possible. They've continued the trend, if anything, gotten better this year. Got a coach everybody likes, got a quarterback everybody can root for, a wide receiver with a great last name, or a great first name, rather. Great name. You've got, a lot of talent and a team that could be good for a couple of years, right? Isn't, overly dependent on a single superstar like some teams are. And that, believe it or not, is the Detroit Football Lions. What say
Sure
you?
is. No, it's a great story. Clinched their first division title since 1993. The only team that's gone longer is this aforementioned Cleveland Browns, who last won their division in 1989.
And will not win it this year.
And will not win it this year. So, tough one for Cleveland, but they continue to wait. The Lions breaking that ridiculously long drought. First time they've won the division since since realignment. So the last time they won it was the NFC Central, which is just incredible to think about. But hey, that's been the plight of them. Taking that big first step onto the first rung onto the ladder out of the Downtrodden franchise pits. Yeah, I think what's been impressive about them, as you mentioned, is it's been a bit more diverse. Like obviously the game against the Vikings ended up having a pretty wacky ending, but it's not just we'll throw it 50 times a game. Two very good running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Offensive line's playing a lot better. Goff's had some bad weeks. He's not a MVP level quarterback, but he's very capable. He's been up and down. I think the one thing I would say counter to your
he's
point
as good
is
as Brock Purdy.
They are very dependent on one player, which is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do think he is I do, because they don't have another player who can fill that role. Like Jameson Williams has come along, right? Sam Laporta has had some great games. He had 3 touchdowns a week ago, which was great.
Yeah, it was.
They just don't have that other, he's such a reliable target. Like he's not like the downfield threat guy necessarily, because he's not that super fast, but the way that he continually gets open and gets you 10 catches a game, and then he gets you 8 catches, then he gets you 12 catches, like they're just very hard to find. So I do think they do really, really need him to stay healthy. Hope he does. He's a great player. So I do think there is a bit of a key man dependency just on him specifically because of the role that he plays in the offense. He's so multiple. But what's great with the Lions is they can beat you running the ball. The defense is not, top of the top, but it's good enough. Get the job done. They've got some great players, like got Aiden Hutchinson, Brian Branch has had some good games. They got 4 interceptions off Nick Mullins last week, which, helps because he's, a little bit reckless. But I think that's what's been impressive with the Lions this year is lots of different ways of winning games, not just freaky deaky, fluke stuff. They look like a solid football team, clearly well coached, clearly everyone's bought into it, and they're going to host a playoff game, which is awesome. And I think everyone can get on board with the Lions finally having some success, because it's been a pretty rough run for that group. So very happy for the Lions. I would say they're not out of the DFI yet, but they are climbing into the ranks. And maybe, can you imagine if the Lions won the Super Bowl? I mean, we talked about a surprise team. Not many people were picking the Lions to win the Super Bowl, but hey, are they any worse than any of these other teams? I don't think they are. So maybe we're going to get that to really pull them out of the doldrums and lift a Lombardi in the Motor City. That'd be something.
Well, listen, we don't officially kick anybody out of the DFI until we vote next year on who's in the DFI. But I think Detroit certainly making an argument, though I have to disagree with you on being addicted to one player. They have, certainly he is their best player from an offense perspective anyway. But they have, in my mind, kind of what Kansas City had 2 or 3 years ago, which is a lot of guys who can do the thing on a week-to-week basis. I think Sam Laporta can be your guy that week. Josh Reynolds can be your guy. Jahmyr Gibbs, hello? David Montgomery even has been very good. And even a guy like Khalif Raymond, who you should appreciate above all, can be that guy who catches the 46-yard touchdown for you when no one's watching him because you've got other guys out there. Like you double Amon-Ra St. Brown, fine. But you're not going to target one of these other guys to take out of the game. And one of them is going to be able to step up for you. At least they have been. The team's 11-4, tied for first in the whole conference. I mean, listen, their last 2 games, all right, this season are against who? They're against Denver. I'm sorry, not Denver. Dallas. That's the other D team. If they beat Dallas, then they finish with Minnesota. If they win both those games, they could conceivably be the 1 seed.
Yeah.
In the
Amazing.
NFC, I mean, it's shocking. It's amazing. I am on the NFC side of the house. Let's go Detroit Lions. How great would a Lions-Browns Super Bowl be?
Best thing. That would be the best thing to happen in the league in a very long time. But Tim, that's the plight of the downtrodden. I want to flip the script a little bit now as we come towards the end of this podcast. So
yes,
2 items left to go in the agenda that we didn't set out before this started. So
correct.
If you've got here, congratulations for riding the road with us. Tim, got 2 things to tick off. One is some quick hitters. I have some quick hits for you for once.
Oh, it's backwards. Everything's backwards.
And the other thing is the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week, who this week, Tim, is presented by yourself. So why don't you give us this week's Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week? I'll do some quick hitters for you, and then we'll get out of here.
I love it. And I do have to tell you, dear listener, that I'm very honored. I'm not normally allowed to pick the Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week. Luke generally takes the honor. I am often accused of trying to give it to someone who is too mainstream because that's how I
were drafted.
Things, mostly because I don't know people who aren't drafted in the way Luke does. And so anyhow, our Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week comes to us this week for doing a couple of things. One of those is big time redemption story. Second is, why in the world is this guy in the NFL? And the third is, he beat Russell Wilson, and we always love when people beat Russell Wilson. And that is Chad Michael Ryland of the New England Patriots. We are going kicker for the second time this season, unless you count running backs who also kick, in which case third time this
improvised
season.
Kickers notwithstanding. Yep.
That's right. I have to tell you, this is one of those stories that I don't quite understand. Now, he was a 5-star kicker coming out of high school and ranked 24th in the country.
Okay.
And I went, wait, what? Okay. That doesn't sound like a Jonas. This guy did not even play football until his junior year of high school. He didn't want to play football. His dad said, you really ought to try football. He was a fairly good but not remarkable soccer player. He was a fairly good but not remarkable baseball player. His dad said, this the kicking thing you do, you could probably do better on the ball that's more oblong shaped, and convinced him to try out. He made the team. He was all county in his hometown of Lebanon, the one in Pennsylvania, not the one near Syria. And the guy, was good. He was good. My favorite thing about him, though, in his early football career is they wanted to train before the tryout. Though I don't know if you know this or not, most people don't have a set of uprights in their backyard.
True.
And so they needed a place to train. And so they actually snuck onto the school's athletic field after it was closed to practice kicking field goals ahead of his tryout, which I think is great.
Wow.
They were told on more than one occasion to leave. They were found and told, get out of here. And they would leave, go around the block, come right back, and sneak back onto the field and kick again, which I just think is spectacular. Anyhow,
great. That's great.
So Chad Ryland starts his college career. Yeah, it is. Starts his college career as a walk-on. So first of all, the fact that you're a 5-star ranked kicker on the recruiting list and
kick is a weird. What can we say?
Yeah, I first of all, how you determine the 24th best kicker in the country in high school?
Who's 20? Who's 21?
There's nobody's watching enough of these kids to. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So he walks on at the powerhouse football program of Eastern Michigan,
the factory, Tim,
and wins the starting job as a true freshman. Yeah, football factory, Eastern Michigan. There are some NFL players from Eastern Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, so he wins the job as a freshman, and according to my sources, which are super inside and may include Wikipedia, he actually made what he would call his most memorable kick of his career up until, of course, this week. In his second game he ever played, and that was a 24-yard game-winning field goal to beat the other illustrious football powerhouse of Purdue, 20-19.
Boilermakers, tough times.
The funniest thing to me about this season is he wins the job. He starts out well. He beats the Boilermakers on a last-second game-winning chip shot.
Still going to make it.
Goes on to kind of sputter the rest of the season and finishes the year 12 of 20 on field goal attempts. That's 60%. And I don't have to tell you, dear listener, that's not what field goal kickers are looking for. However, as a sophomore at Eastern Michigan, he does retain the job. No bueno. It's bad. It was bad. And he appeared in all 13 games. Now, let me tell you, if there's one thing Chad Ryland can hang his hat on, it's his PATs. Converted 41 of 41 his freshman year, made 35 of 35 his sophomore year, made 47 out of 47 his junior year. The field goals, though, not as good. 14 of 19 his sophomore year after 12 of 20 his freshman year. And then he did manage 19 of 22 his final year at Eastern Michigan. Apparently, 1 year of going 19 of 22, if you make all your PATs, is the opportunity to transfer to a quote-unquote better football factory in Maryland, illustrious Maryland football program, churns out tons of national championships. For the Terrapins.
Scott Van Pelt, very pleased with this development, no doubt.
Yes, probably the most famous person who ever went to Maryland. Anyhow, when he left Eastern Michigan, having played all of three seasons, going 12 of 20, 14 of 19, 19 of 22, but making 100 and something extra points, he leaves as the all-time scorer in Eastern Michigan football history with 309 points to his credit. In his only season at Maryland, he did kick fairly well, made 19 of 23, including 50% on kicks over 50 yards. So all I'll say,
which in college is not nothing, right? Because college kickers don't kick it that far. So,
that's
you have to get there.
Is he's clearly got a leg. His accuracy improved throughout his college career. He didn't start kicking until he was a junior. I guess I can see it. But here's the one part that kind of makes him not as much Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Year material, at least in Luke's eyes. And that is he was drafted. He was drafted 112th overall by the New England Patriots. Quiz for you. How many kickers have been drafted earlier than 112th since the year 2000? So we're going to get not guys who might have kicked but also played quarterback and all that crap out of the way. No. Kickers who have been drafted ahead of the 112th pick since 2000. How many of them have there been?
Okay, I can only do it by naming as many as I can, so I'll try that. So Sebastian Janikowski, right, is the obvious one.
Yep.
First round pick by the Raiders. Roberto Aguayo for the Buccaneers. That was the second round when they traded up. Jake Moody was this year. That was the third round, right? I think.
That's right.
So that's three. There's going to be maybe, I'm going to guess there's two others. I'm going to say five.
There are actually total. 7. So pretty good.
Should be able to name more. I wish I could get more, but I don't think I can think of any. Go on. You tell me.
I'm going to give you some years as I go through and see if any of them jump out to you. 2005, he went to the Jets. Mike Nugent.
Mike Nugent was drafted. Interesting. Okay. Good one.
Second round, my friend. Second round,
what?
47th overall. Only the Jets would do such a thing. Yes.
Only the Jets.
We also had Nate Kading, round 3, 65th overall to the Chargers. And the last one was Bill Gramatica, 2001 to the Cardinals at 90.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, yeah. And the last,
but not even the most famous Gramatica brother, Martin Gramatica, the more famous of the kicking bros, I would say. But yes. And there's one more.
Travis Dorsch, number 109 to the Bengals in 2002.
No idea who that is.
That's all I got for you on that. I just thought it blew me away that there were that many kickers that went ahead of him. But the point is, he was actually relatively highly drafted. Our dear friend Chad. First of all, Chad, not a particularly standoutish name. It's kind of
and also I would say
a little bit.
Also, an interesting thing to be following in the footsteps of, I can't remember his first name, but I think it was Blake. Was it Rohrwasser, who the Patriots drafted as a kicker a couple of years ago? I think it was the 6th round, who never played a game for the team because he ended up having a tattoo which was of questionable questionable links to far-right ideologies, I'll say that much, and he ended up getting cut. So the Patriots have a great record with drafting kickers on that front.
Yeah, so Chad Ryland drafted highly. If you don't know from that list we just went through, not necessarily a badge of honor, drafted highly as a kicker. You would think that it is. It doesn't always go so well. Has not had the season one might have hoped. I will note, Luke, he did go to the combine. He did not kick at the combine, but he was measured into interviews. 5'11 and 3/4, 190 pounds, and below average size hands. Why they measured his hands? 9 3/8 inches. I don't know why the kicker was like, yeah, measure my hands, especially if it's not helpful.
Maybe he's gonna
is what it is.
Hold for himself. I don't know. No idea.
Maybe. Well, maybe. Yeah, I got nothing. So he starts out the year, makes his first 2 field goals, a 49-yarder and a 48-yarder. You're thinking, okay, all right. And then he missed the next 2. And then he made 2, and then he missed 2. And you're going, oh, this is not good, my friend. And he finally gets on a little bit of a run. Now, he doesn't attempt a single kick beyond 43 yards for the months of October or the first half of November. But when he does, he makes his field goals, and he makes a run of 7 field goals in a row, Luke, and then proceeds to miss 3 of his next 4.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, this is not
Hot
good.
seat.
But remember, Luke, our dear friend, Mr. Ryland, if he can do one thing, it's what? Kick extra points.
PATs.
Perfect in his college career in extra points. He had been perfect in his NFL career up until Christmas Eve, where they're playing the Denver Broncos. He misses a field goal wide left, missed the net.
Wide.
It was not a good kick.
Yeah. Wide. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not good. And then misses his first extra point of his kicking career in college or the pros. And you're thinking, do you remember? You probably do remember, Luke. There was a kicker, I feel like Dallas, though I could be making that up, on Monday night, right when we first started doing the podcast.
It
who
was,
you just saw his career end on television. He missed 6.
Yeah, he missed 5 extra points in one game, wasn't it? I think, or it was Brett Maher.
I mean, they stopped kicking him because he couldn't make them. Was it Maher? That's what I thought.
I think it was Brett Maher. Yeah, he missed the last extra point of the game before, and then he missed, I think, 4 in a row on the Monday night broadcast. I will say about the Ryland missed extra point from this weekend is my favorite highlight. There were some great plays this weekend, but his missed extra point is my favorite highlight of the whole weekend. And I will tell you why. If you watch it on the broadcast copy, when it hits the upright, it's how they've got the post mic'd up. He must hit exactly where the mic. It sounds like a nuclear explosion. Like, it's the loudest noise I've ever heard on a television set. I was thinking, when it happened, I thought, NORAD is just down the street in Colorado. I was like, they probably registered that as like an event. Like, we need to keep, what the hell's going on in Denver? Like, this guy's just hit the upright so hard, it sounds like someone's testing an atom bomb at Mile High Stadium. It was an incredibly funny thing. Rich Eisen was doing
That's actually the plot of The Sum of All Fears.
Yeah, and he just said, you don't need me to tell you that he missed it. I was like, yeah, that wasn't a doink. That was a kaboom off the upright. But yeah, 2 missed kicks in this game, not great. And he's been in the hot seat for the Patriots faithful, wanted to get rid of this guy. But
anyhow, the Patriots are driving with a chance to win the game after Russell Wilson was driving with a chance to win the game and laid an egg, as he is prone to do from time to time. Won't go through that whole game with you. Check it out. Russell Wilson was setting himself up to be the hero of a game he had already previously been the GOAT of. Yeah, that's what he does. But he screwed it up, and he gave Bailey Zappe's Patriots one more chance. And as Bailey Zappi is wont to do, he got him. Yeah, it's close enough, but we couldn't.
So close.
So we're leaving our kicker with a 56-yarder to win the game. He has kicked
on Christmas
in
night.
His career exactly Christmas Eve. Exactly 1 field goal of longer than 50 yards. It was a 51-yarder. He has attempted 2 others, missed them both. And he's sitting there from 56 yards away, having already missed 2 kicks today, knowing his career is probably over. And he's lined up with a chance to beat the Denver Broncos and a team that has not won very many games this year. And so this is meaningful, right? You talk about coaches, GMs might want to lose, get a better draft spot. No players are out there going, maybe we can lose. They want
and you don't want to get fired on Christmas Eve either, right? That's not a great time to get shit canned.
Well, you also don't want to miss a game-winning kick on Christmas Eve and then have to like go hang out with the family the next day.
Right.
DeVito has been famous this year for living with his parents. A lot of these rookies, a lot of these younger NFL players, particularly the ones that aren't making much more above minimum, aren't, celebrities. Like they're going to go to their mom's house for Christmas like the rest of us. But you don't want to miss that kick. And he did not miss that kick. He put it right down the middle. Would have been good from 61. Absolutely spanked that kick. And what more can you say about a Jonas Gray Player of the Year, about having a unlikely story on his journey to the NFL, a unlikely drafted high, and then crap the bed, and then come back and win one for your team. Yeah. Here's your teaspoon, Mr. Ryland. Well done.
Very well, for sure. And extremely good to see someone on Christmas Eve night saving their job with a 57-yard field goal. High drama. Good for him.
Boston Globe referred to it as Christmas miracle. Yeah.
Yeah. So good for you, Chad Ryland. Wish you all the best. Tim, last couple of things before we get out of here. Quick hitters. I've got a couple for you. I'm going to issue a couple of statements for you, and I would see if you will agree or disagree with these statements. Statement number 1. Nick Mullins is the white Jameis Winston.
I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole, but I see where you're going with this.
What did you make of, as the man they call Big Dick Nick, and the Vikings almost pulling out the win against the Detroit Lions? 4 interceptions for BDN in this one, echoing the great Jameis Winston's entertainment value as a quarterback. Any thoughts on the Vikings, as we mentioned them a little bit earlier, but just any thoughts on that as they almost come back, or Nick Mullins' wild horse quarterback style?
Yeah, I picked the Vikings to win the division. I was really thinking they were going to be able to keep it going from last year. So have kind of been rooting for them off and on. Certainly losing 4 of their last 5 has not helped their cause after they sort of got the ship righted earlier in the year. A lot of feelings about the Vikings. And so we should probably have a whole podcast now, I feel, about the Vikings. Dobbs came in, won his first game, got all these accolades. 3 weeks later, he's been benched. You're going to Mullins, and, he's had a career where he's been all over the place. He was Brock Purdy before Brock Purdy was Brock Purdy, coming in and playing better than he thought he would out in San Francisco. So it was fun to watch him play well. He's certainly a confident son of a gun, isn't he? And I do love when you have a nickname that every announcer in the NFL wants to talk about, but obviously can't say on television. And so they allude to it in funny ways. It does make for good copy.
Sure does. And it helps when you throw into Justin Jefferson, who made yet another in his long line of absurd contested catches to convert a 3rd and 27, which again is a ball that should never have been thrown. But Nick Mullins giving us the highlight reel, and we appreciate it. Speaking of quarterbacks giving us great highlights, Tim, we've mentioned him. He's become very quickly a podcast favorite, which is Joe Flacco with the Cleveland Browns. An entertaining brand of offensive football, throwing for 1 trillion yards, all of them to Amari Cooper, who no doubt doomed many fantasy football players this weekend with his 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is fairly good, I think, if memory serves from my general knowledge of NFL statistics. Flacco in his 4 starts, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I'm going to issue you one quiz question followed by one statement about the Cleveland Browns. So Joe Flacco's thrown for 300 yards in each of the last 3 games. So 3 of his 4 starts, he's thrown for 300 or more yards. How many times has Deshaun Watson done it for Cleveland?
0.
The correct answer is 0 times in his 11 starts. So Joe Flacco has done it 3 times. Deshaun Watson has done it 0. As we mentioned on last week's podcast, our dream is Joe Flacco hoists the Lombardi and then starts week 1 next year. I heard on Good Morning Football today a genuine discussion about what happens if Joe Flacco comes back next year and does he want to start for the Browns. So we were 1 week ahead of the game on that one. Credit to us. Second statement,
people
Tim.
Following the pod.
Scott Pioli was plugged in. Here's my second statement. And it's an awards-themed one. We talked a lot about MVP today. It's Browns-themed.
Oh.
Kevin Stefanski should be the coach of the year. Your thoughts?
Ooh. So
it would be his second coach of the year award.
Worthy. It would.
He has won it before.
It's worthy of a discussion. It's probably worthy of a longer discussion than we're going to give it in this particular podcast. I don't know that he is coach of the year.
He's He's on his fourth starting quarterback of the
one.
season. The quarterback that they paid $250 million to
there, yeah.
sucks. They started PJ Walker. They started Dorian Thompson-Robinson. They're now starting a 39-year-old Joe Flacco. They're winning games. They've got 10 wins. They're going to make the postseason. Very, very outside shot, maybe, of catching the Ravens. If the Ravens lose out, I think it's mathematically possible, but it's not going to happen. So are you yay or nay? Just give me a yay or nay. Stefanski for Coach of the Year, if you had a vote today.
I got to go nay, only because I think there's a little bit of a false narrative with the Browns this year. They're winning. They've been winning. They've won 3 in a row. They won 3 in a row earlier in the year. But the teams they beat, right? They beat the Bears by 3. They beat the Texans with no CJ Stroud. They beat the Jaguars, who I think we're all learning are not any good. In their prior 3-game win streak, they beat the Cardinals, who are terrible. They beat the Ravens. All right, fine. Unconscionably, but it's a division game. That kind of stuff happens. They beat the Steelers, same sort of thing, 13, and the Steelers are terrible. Before that, it was the Colts. The one game that you want to give them credit for is their win against the Niners earlier in the year. But it was the Niners when they were beat up and didn't have all of their full complement of talent. And so the schedule makers helping the Browns. If you want to give the Browns any credit here, it's they're winning the games they ought to win, where a lot of teams this year are not winning the games they ought to win. And maybe that's what you give credit to coaching for. You say, hey, look, if they can come out and you win the games you're supposed to win, your coach has got you up, you're ready to go, you're ready to play the games. But they've also lost to the Broncos. They've also lost to the Rams. They did lose to my Steelers as well as beat us once. So Coach of the Year, I don't know. I have some other guys I like. We'll probably talk about awards another day, so I won't bury the lead there. But I'm going to go no. The excellent effort from my friends in Cleveland. And I honestly, and I mean this, is from the bottom of my heart as a Steeler fan. The Browns have not been good enough for anywhere near long enough for me to have any animosity towards them in my entire lifetime. And so I am rooting for you. The Steelers are done, cooked. If the Steelers sneak into the playoffs, you can't beat us, but you can beat everyone else as far as I'm concerned. Go Browns. Well done, Mr. Stefanski. Maybe you'll earn that Coach of the Year award after all, but I'm going to say no for now.
Okay. Well, it's certainly a year where there's going to be an interesting discussion, because I think similarly with the teams, similar with the MVPs, who you got to give it to someone. And is there an outstanding candidate? I don't know. Maybe it's Kevin Stefanski. Maybe it's somebody else, but we will find that out in due course. And we'll be back with you again, dear listener, in the new year. In 2024, our last part of 2023. Thank you for joining us as we did a little whip round there. Hope you've all had a fantastic Christmas. Happy New Year to all. Enjoy your champagne and Old Lang Syne or whatever it is that you do on New Year's. Before then, feel free. We encourage you to find us on the socials at Half Yard Line Pod. You can find us on YouTube, Half Yard Line Pod. You can find us on email, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com. On your podcast app of choice, leave us a rating and a review. We appreciate it. And we will wish you a fantastic rest of your festive season, a prosperous new year, and hopefully an exciting NFL playoffs to come. But for now, it is ta-ra.
Happy New Year.